Since the second half of the 20th century, horror movies and books have gradually spread and have been increasingly appreciated by the audience. Anyway, not everyone knows the origin of this genre. Among the cornerstones of the Gothic genre, that is to say the masterpiece of the Gothic genre, there is Dracula by Bram Stoker. The novel, written in 1897, was inspired by Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia. Written in epistolary form and in form of diaries, it is considered the last of the greatest Gothic novels. The story is set in England and Transylvania and develops from the 3rd May to the 6th of November 1890. The novel begins with the pages of the diary of the young Jonathan Harker, who is going to Transylvania to sell an English property to a local aristocrat. At the castle, the young man meets the aristocrat, the Count Dracula. He gradually understands to be a prisoner in the castle, without any possibility to contact his future bride, Mina Murray. His mind is put to the test in the gloomy castle due to the disconcerting characteristics that he discovers about the Count. He seems to have super speed and super strength. His five senses are very powerful. The Count is absent during the day, hates mirrors and doesn't reflect himself into them. He goes out of the castle through the windows and can transform into animals such as bat and wolf. At the same time, Mina notices that Lucy, a friend of hers, doesn't feel well. Dr. Seward immediately notices that her illness is not a simple illness and calls a friend of him, the Dutch Dr. Van Helsing, expert in mysterious illnesses. The situation worsens and the woman dies. Van Helsing explains to his friend Seward that they dealt with a powerful and evil demon called vampire, who feeds with the young woman's blood, subjugating her with his dark arts. As time passed, Van Helsing, Homewood, Lucy's fiancé, Quincy Morris, Lucy's suitor and Seward, decided to track down who caused all the suffering and kill him. Van Helsing gets in touch with Mina and they understand that who detained Jonathan and who killed Lucy were the same person, Dracula. Van Helsing, Seward, Morris, Homewood, Harker and his wife identify many houses that the Count bought and that were his refuges and consecrate them so that the vampire couldn't come back. In the meantime, Seward finds a patient of him near death. The man understands that he met the vampire several times and at the very occasion he tried to stop him to find Mrs. Harker. Mina meets the vampire during nights indeed. For revenge, the Count has subjugating her and Mrs. Harker is by the time infected. The vampire leaves England to come back to his castle. By hypnotizing Mina, who is infected, and so she is connected with the vampire's mind, they understand that he is in a coffin onto a ship to Romania. The group splits to be on the trail of the Count. Mina and Van Helsing go to the castle to consecrate the vampire last refuge. Harker and Homewood rent a boat to follow the ship by river. Seward and Morris follow the ship by land, riding along the river's banks. Van Helsing manages to consecrate the castle. Waiting for the others, the doctor and Mrs. Harker see the carriage with a coffin, driven by men and their friends running to stop it. During the fight with the other group, Morris dies, but Harker manages to open the coffin and cut the vampire's head off. The novel has had an incredible success, and since its publication up to now, it inspired a huge number of films, more or less true to the book. One of the most recent is Dracula Untold, a 2014 film. This version is not true to the book. It embellishes the story of Vlad, Prince of Wallachia. The only themes that have been inspired by the Stoker's novel are the vampire's characteristics. The monsters is similar to an old man, with sharp teeth and nails. He has super speed and super strength. He feeds on blood. He is a dark creature that eats light and silver. He dies when beaten with a stake. Bats follow him and obey him. The film takes up the figure of the fanatical servant that in the book is Seward the patient. On the contrary, the character of Mina appears only in the end of the film, but she plays a totally different role. The film also takes up and explains the origin of the myth. The novel inspired a set of books and films based on the figure of Dracula, but none of them manages to match this masterpiece. Stoker decides to set his novel in Transylvania, land that is very appropriate for this literary region, because cradle of beliefs and religions from Europe and Asia and rich in Gothic buildings. As it is already been mentioned, the Irish writer based his novel on Vlad III, the Prince of Wallachia. He was considered so bloody thirsty to be called the Impaler. Within this framework, Stoker creates his masterpiece, extremely original if we consider the period when it was written. It captivates the reader's attention from the first pages and keeps her glued to the book with bated breath until the end of the story, creating a crescendo of emotions. The writer makes the reader travel back in time to a period when nobody would have imagined a so sinful, mysterious, luxurious, and fascinating creature playing the role of the protagonist. The nightmare begins and ends only at dawn. Mystery increases gradually, and the fear provoked by the gradual description of the Count's character involves an emotional climax. In the book, no splatter scenes are described, but anxiety, dread, and all the other feelings are provoked by a set of adventures that are focused on a clever and calculating gentleman. That's why the writer is considered so great. That is one of the first novels to call to mind the legend of vampires, and that was able to make this terribly fascinating and bloody-thirsty creature interesting to the collective imagination. Stoker managed to put together all the ancient beliefs that already existed in the Roman society on bloody suckers and soul stealers, casting a new light on their myth and creating the vampire prototype. From this moment on, all the vampire characters are based on Stoker's model. All characters are masterfully described, some elements are intentionally implicit, others are delineated explicitly. Stoker chooses to write his story in epistolary form, in form of diaries, and it is said before. It is a very original technique that captures the reader's mind even more. The theme of the struggle between good and evil is celebrated superbly. Other themes are the death and women. The women protagonists are described as angels, beautiful inside as well as outside, perfect in every respect. They are the motor that drives men's actions. The novel is the horror novel par excellence, rich in detailed psychological analysis that involve the reader and transmit all the positive or negative emotions that the characters feel, and make him, her identify with them. Wonderfully unsettling, terribly realistic. That's the right definition.